One book, one extraordinary life. 48 chapters of saints, science, and the search for God.
I'm Kai.
And I'm Maya.
And this is our take on Autobiography of a Yogi, chapter by chapter. The question is simple, direct. A railway position waiting, senior role, stable, respectable. Everything that Mukunda's father has been working toward for years. Everything the world says a young man should want.
But Mukunda looks at his guru and asks something completely different. "Sir, will you not make me a monk of the Swami Order?" And there's something so tender in how he asks it, so hopeful, like he's been holding this question in his heart for years, and finally has permission to speak it aloud.
Chapter 24. I become a monk of the Swami Order. And it's the moment where everything changes. Not gradually, not over time. In a single conversation on a sunny Thursday in July 1914, just weeks after his university graduation.
Sri Yukteswar has tested this determination before. In previous years, Mukunda has asked the same thing, and the master has refused, deliberately, to measure how deep the commitment actually goes, to see if it's real longing or a passing sentiment. And today, he smiles, graciously, and says, "Very well, tomorrow I will initiate you into Swami death."
There's a quote right there from Lahiri Mahasaya that matters. If you don't invite God to be your summer guest, he won't come in the winter of your life. And Sri Yukteswar is saying, look, I'm happy you've persisted. You've kept this desire alive year after year. That persistence itself is the proof. That's what I needed to see.
And Mukunda's response is so beautiful. He says, "Dear Master, I could never falter in my goal to belong to the Swami Order like your reverenced self." There's such love in that line, not flattery, just genuine gratitude and devotion. He's saying, I want what you have. I want to walk the path you're walking.
But here's something most people miss about this moment. Mukunda's father has just arranged this major railway position, the Bengal-Nagpur Railway, a career, security, everything a parent wants for their child in a traditional society. And Mukunda says no. He refuses it. He looks at his father and says, "Master, my father has been anxious for me to accept an executive position with the Bengal-Nagpur Railway, but I have definitely refused it."
Think about that weight. His father isn't some distant figure. We've learned throughout the book how much Yogananda loves his father, how much his father loves him in return. But at a certain point, there's something deeper pulling, a calling that matters more than career, more than family expectations, more than the normal trajectory of a Bengali life.
And it's not romantic or naive. Yogananda is clear about what renunciation actually means. He writes, "To allot God a secondary place in life was to me inconceivable." He's not saying other people are wrong. He's saying, for me, there's a hierarchy, and God is at the top. Everything else follows from that choice.
But then he gets really precise about what renunciation is and what it isn't. He says, though he is the sole owner of the cosmos, silently showering us with gifts from life to life, one thing yet remains which he does not own, in which each human heart is empowered to withhold or bestow: man's love. That's the core teaching. God respects your freedom. God doesn't force love. And if you give your love to God, you're exercising the deepest freedom available to you.
So renunciation isn't about hating the world or rejecting creation. It's about where you place your allegiance. It's about saying, my primary relationship is with God. Everything else flows from that. And that clarity actually makes you more useful in the world, not less. Because you're not driven by greed or ego or fear. You're serving something larger.
And here's something really important, Yogananda writes about his friends who went a different way. He says, I analyzed the lives of many of my friends who, after undergoing certain spiritual discipline, had then married. Launched on the sea of worldly responsibilities, they had forgotten their resolutions to meditate deeply. So he's not saying marriage is wrong. He's saying something about himself, something about his particular nature and his particular calling.
Right. He's specific about this. He says, with what velvet glove of every humility has he covered the iron hand of omnipotence? It's almost poetic. He's acknowledging that God's power is absolute, but it's expressed through total respect for human choice. God doesn't manipulate, doesn't coerce, just invites and waits.
And then the next day, is the most memorable day of Yogananda's life so far. He describes it in vivid detail. The inner balcony of Sri Yukteswar's hermitage in Serampore, a sunny Thursday in July. And Sri Yukteswar takes a new piece of white silk and dips it into a dye of ochre, the traditional color of the Swami Order, the color of renunciation. And once the cloth has dried, The master drapes it around him, like a renunciate's robe.
Wait, ochre silk? I thought swamis traditionally wore orange or saffron robes and lived in poverty. That's the whole point, right? Simple cotton, show they've given up material things.
Right. So in India, swamis usually wear simple cotton robes, often orange, to show they've renounced material attachments. But look at what Sri Yukteswar says. He says, "Someday you will go to the West, where silk is preferred. As a symbol, I have chosen for you this silk material instead of the customary cotton." It's such a specific comment, like he's seeing into Yogananda's future, like he already knows this boy will bring yoga to America.
And the reason he gives is beautiful. The silk preserves certain subtle bodily currents better than cotton does. It's not about luxury. It's about the energy body, the astral body. The silk interacts with those subtle currents in a way that cotton doesn't. So it's actually more spiritually practical, even though it looks more luxurious by conventional standards.
So the robe is draped around him, and for the first time, Mukunda is a renunciate, formally. The white silk, dyed ochre, wrapped around him like a sacrament. But here's the thing that's remarkable. Sri Yukteswar says he's averse to ceremonies. He doesn't want elaborate ritual. He asks Mukunda simply to choose a new name.
And that's huge, because the formal Bibidisa initiation usually includes a fire ceremony, symbolic funeral rites, the old name burned away, the body cremated in the flame of wisdom. The newly made Swami is given a chant, like, "This Atma is Brahma," or "Thou art that," or "I am he." But Sri Yukteswar cuts through all that. He just says, pick a new name. What do you want to be called?
And Mukunda thinks for a moment, just a moment, and he says, Yogananda, and he explains it. The name literally means bliss through divine union. Yoga means union, Ananda means bliss. So he's choosing a name that describes the goal itself, that describes what he's seeking, not some heroic title or spiritual credential, but the very thing he wants to experience.
And Sri Yukteswar responds, be it so. Forsaking your family name of Mukunda Lal Ghosh, henceforth you shall be called Yogananda of the Giri branch of the Swami Order. The Giri branch, the mountain branch. And that matters. There are 10 subdivisions of the Swami Order, each with its own character and lineage. Giri, Sagar, Bharati, Aranya, Puri, Tirtha, Saraswati. And Yogananda belongs to the Giri, the mountain tradition.
And all of this traces back to Shankara. This is ancient. Shankara lived over 1,000 years ago. He established the monastic order in its present form, created these 10 branches. Each one has an unbroken line of spiritual succession. So when Yogananda takes the name and the robe, he's not joining something new. He's stepping into a tradition that goes back over a millennium, maybe longer.
That's a huge responsibility, you know? Because every Swami in the Giri lineage since Shankara is part of your spiritual family. You're not just taking a name, you're accepting a place in a chain of teachers and disciples that's been unbroken for centuries.
And Yogananda gets at this when he explains what it means to be a Swami. He says, every Swami belongs to the ancient monastic order which was organized in its present form by Shankara. Because it is a formal order with an unbroken line of saintly representatives serving as active leaders, no man can give himself the title of Swami. You can't self-ordain. There's a lineage, a transmission. It's like an apostolic succession, but in the yoga tradition.
And all Swamis take the same 3 vows: poverty, chastity, and obedience to the spiritual teacher. But here's what's interesting. Most Swamis don't hide in caves. They engage actively in humanitarian and educational work. They serve society. They're not rejecting the world. They're serving it from a place of detachment. Because renunciation doesn't mean rejecting service. It means serving without attachment to the results.
And here's something that might seem contradictory. Sri Yukteswar is a Swami. He's a monk of this ancient order, but he's also described as a yogi. And Yogananda makes very clear that these aren't the same thing. Being a Swami means you follow a certain formal lineage, take vows, renounce worldly ties. But being a yogi is a different question entirely.
Yeah, and I want to understand that distinction, because it sounds like the terms get used interchangeably sometimes.
Right. A yogi practices a specific technique, Kriya Yoga, or other yoga practices. You can be a householder and be a yogi. You can be married and be a yogi. The yoga practice itself is a scientific technique. It doesn't require you to renounce anything except what the technique itself requires discipline. But a Swami has taken formal renunciate vows. That's an institutional identity.
So you could be a Swami who doesn't practice yoga intensely, and you could be a yogi who's married and works in the world. They're different categories, but Sri Yukteswar is both.
Exactly. He's a Swami because of his formal connection to this ancient order, but he's also a yogi because he practices the scientific techniques of yoga, and he's mastered them completely. Most people confuse the two because the great yogis are often Swamis, but they're not identical. Sri Yukteswar embodies both.
And the teaching here is important because yoga is being misunderstood in the West. Yogananda makes this very clear. Some Western writers were saying yoga is unsuitable for Westerners, that it's only for Indians, only for ascetics, only for certain temperaments. But Yogananda says that's completely false. Yoga is universal.
He writes, like any other science, yoga is applicable to people of every climate and time. The theory advanced by certain ignorant writers that yoga is unsuitable for Westerners is wholly false. Because yoga isn't about geography. It's not about culture. It's a method for restraining the natural turbulence of thought. It works on anybody, any climate, anytime.
And he quotes a really interesting voice on this, Carl Jung, the famous Swiss psychologist. Jung attended an Indian Science Congress, and he endorses yoga directly. He writes, "When a religious method recommends itself as scientific, it can be certain of its public in the West. Yoga fulfills this expectation." And then he goes deeper. He says, "Quite apart from the charm of the new and the fascination of the half-understood, there is good cause for yoga to have many adherents."
Jung is saying yoga offers something the West is hungry for: controllable experience, reproducibility. It promises something that satisfies the scientific need for facts. You can practice the technique and have the experience yourself. You don't have to believe, you don't have to have faith. You practice and you verify.
And then Jung says something really profound. He says yoga offers the possibility of controllable experience and thus satisfies the scientific need of facts. It's a method, not a religion. And then he adds, by reason of its breadth and depth, its venerable age, its doctrine and method, which include every phase of life, it promises undreamed of possibilities. Hold on, I want to sit with that. Every phase of life.
So Jung is recognizing that yoga is comprehensive. It's not just physical exercise. It's not just philosophy. It's a complete science that addresses every dimension of human life, from the body to the mind to consciousness itself.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Jung talks about the physiological dimension too. He says the yoga practices aren't merely mechanical or scientific. They're also philosophical. The breathing exercises, the body postures, the mind training, all of it unites the body with the spirit. It's a physiological hygiene that's superior to gymnastics and breathing exercises because it's working on every level simultaneously.
Jung even says that in the West, we're approaching a time when inner science will be as important as outer science, when self-control becomes as valuable as controlling nature, and yoga is preparing for that. Yoga is the method that humanity will need as we develop more outer power and realize we need inner wisdom to match it.
That's a powerful context for what just happened to Yogananda. He's stepping into this ancient lineage at exactly the moment when the West is starting to recognize its value. Jung is writing this. Western intellectuals are already saying, yeah, there's something real here.
But back in that moment, on that balcony in Serampore, Yogananda doesn't know any of that. He just knows that he's been initiated. He's been given a new name and a new identity, and he feels something profound. He describes it as his heart overflowing with gratitude, how lovingly and tirelessly the guru had labored that the boy Mukunda be someday transformed into the monk Yogananda.
And there's a Sanskrit chant that he sings after the initiation. It's from the Sanskriti of Lord Shankara, and it's this beautiful declaration of non-identity. Mind, nor intellect, nor ego feeling. Sky, nor earth, nor metals am I. I am he, blessed spirit, I am he. No birth, no death, no caste have I. Father, mother, have I none. I am he, blessed spirit, I am he. Beyond the flights of fancy, formless am I, permeating the limbs of all life. Bondage I do not fear, I am free, ever free. I am he, blessed spirit, I am he.
It's radical, you know? He's renouncing not just family and career, but the entire structure of identity that the world had given him. Not just Mukunda Lal Ghosh, not just the son of Keshab Chandra Ghosh, not just a Bengali Hindu, not just a male body, not even the intellect or the personality. He's saying, strip all that away. What remains is pure consciousness, pure spirit. I am he.
And it's not depressing or nihilistic. It's liberating. Because once you realize you're not the body, not the mind, not the personality, you're free from all the limitations those carry. You can't be hurt by insults, you can't be limited by karma, you can't be bound by what the world says you are.
And Yogananda explains something crucial about the distinction between a Swami and a yogi. He says a Swami, formerly a monk by virtue of his connection with the ancient order, is not always a yogi. Anyone who practices a scientific technique of God contact is a yogi. So a yogi is defined by practice. A Swami is defined by formal initiation and monastic vows.
And then he goes even deeper. He says a yogi doesn't have to be unmarried or a renunciate at all. A true yogi may remain dutifully in the world. There he is like butter on water, and not like the easily diluted milk of unchurned and undisciplined humanity. So you can be married, you can have a job, you can be embedded in the world completely and still be a yogi. The practice is what makes you a yogi, not the lifestyle.
But for Yogananda, those are two different paths, and he's chosen the renunciant path, the Swami path, because for him personally, that full surrender to God requires that level of commitment. But he's not saying it's the only way. He's saying it's his way.
And Yogananda makes clear that not all Swamis are equally successful or realized. He writes, "Thus only may he justify his title of Swami, one who seeks to achieve union with the Swa or self." It's needless to add that not all formally titled Swamis are equally successful in reaching their high goal. The title doesn't guarantee enlightenment, but it does guarantee connection to this ancient lineage that goes back to Shankara, which goes back even further to the Vedas themselves.
So Yogananda is now part of something vast, a current of consciousness that's been flowing through human history for thousands of years. He's not alone anymore, he's joined. He's initiated, he's been given a name and a robe and a tradition, but he's also leaving something behind.
Yeah, that's the part that weighs on me when I read this. His family name, his father's expectations, the possibility of a normal career, a normal life, marriage and children, and the ordinary securities that most humans want.
That's the weight of what happened on that balcony. It's not presented as tragic, but it is presented as real, as costly, as something that required absolute certainty. Yogananda knows what he's giving up. He's very conscious of it, but he's also very conscious of what he's gaining.
And I think what makes this chapter so powerful is that it's not theoretical. It's not abstract philosophy. It's a young man saying no to everything the world told him to want, and yes to something invisible that he loves more. It's the most human decision possible and also the most spiritual decision possible.
And Sri Yukteswar sees it clearly. He knows what this boy is capable of. He knows the path ahead is difficult and extraordinary, and he provides both the structure through the Swami initiation and the freedom through simplicity and personal choice. He doesn't make Yogananda fit into a mold. He gives him the tradition and lets him find his own way within it.
Next time, we're going to see what this renunciant life actually looks like. We're going to meet some of Yogananda's brother disciples. We're going to see the monastery. We're going to watch him navigate the challenges of living this path in the modern world. Because becoming a Swami is one moment. Living as a Swami is the real test.
And we're going to see that Sri Yukteswar's teaching is going to meet some very modern questions about technology, about the West, about how ancient wisdom translates to contemporary life. And we're going to see Yogananda struggle and grow in ways that make him exactly who he needs to be to bring this teaching to America.
See you next time.